Hey everybody, thanks for watching True Crime Time. For tonight's video, I wanted to talk about those two traffic stops that occurred in Indiana when Bryan and his dad were traveling to Pennsylvania. I was watching those videos and there was a few things that those officers did that just didn't sit right with me. Now there's been some talk out there that those two stops were arranged by the FBI so that law enforcement could get a look at Bryan's hands. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I'm going to share my findings with you and then tell you what I think the real reason is behind those two traffic stops. Before we get to the traffic stop footage, I just wanted to cover a couple of things to establish our timeline. So if we look down here, we can see at the bottom that on November 29th at 12:28 a.m., there was a police officer at Washington State University who queried a white Elantra registered at WSU, Officer Daniel Tiengo. As a result of that query, he located the white Elantra with the Pennsylvania license plate. That vehicle was registered to Bryan Kohberger. Okay, so again, November 29th, they found a connection to the white Elantra that they were looking for. Okay, just 30 minutes later, it appears another officer here, Curtis Whitman, was also looking for a white Elantra, and he found that at Bryan's apartment complex and ran that and also matched that to Bryan for the name. So that was 11:29, early morning. So Officer Whitman also took a look at Bryan's ID and did notice the bushy eyebrows. So keep in mind, Dylan had reported that the perpetrator had bushy eyebrows, and that was really key, a really key piece of evidence that these officers were looking for. So credit to Dylan for being able to remember that in that traumatic situation. So on November 29th, November 30th, they were making that connection of Bryan Kohberger to the white Elantra. Now, they pulled some records, and it probably took them a little bit of time to do that. November 30th, they knew what they were looking for, so they started matching that up with any past contacts with Bryan, and they actually did identify these two contacts that police officers had made with Bryan in the months prior to the murder, one of those on August 21st. The interesting thing here that I noticed is it says here that he was detained. Now, typically, being detained means you're not free to leave. So I'm under the impression here that Bryan was suspicious in some way to the officer, and he was questioned to some extent. The other thing that was very weird to me is that Bryan provided his phone number to the police officer. And I mean, I've been stopped before. I've gotten tickets, and I've never had an interaction where I found for some reason to give a police officer my phone number. So that was a little bit strange to me. Let me know what you think about that. Has anybody else out there ever had an interaction with a police officer where you provided that police officer your cell phone number? Maybe it's normal, I don't know, but that was just something that didn't sit right with me just overall in the affidavit. So there was another stop on October 14th. This one's really creepy to me. You can see again, he was also detained, so I'm under the impression that he was being questioned by the officer. Now, there was an increase in break-ins and property crime around this time, and so I'm sure officers were patrolling and looking for suspicious people. So I think that's probably how they rolled up on Bryan. Now, one creepy thing here is later on in the affidavit, they do mention that they connected this August 21st contact in Moscow to his cell phone ping, but there was no mention of the October 14th ping being talked about. And remember, Bryan turns off his cell phone when he commits the crime. And I wonder that if on October 14th, October 13th, 1 month prior to the actual killings, if maybe Bryan was planning his crime that evening and had his phone turned off, and that's why they didn't mention a ping on that night. I wonder if maybe his original plan was the night of October 13th, and maybe that was interrupted, or, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But I found that date, because it doesn't really say the time here. I don't know if anybody has the time, but I imagine that contact with the police officer was probably late at night or early morning hours. What do you guys think? Do you think maybe Bryan was considering committing this crime on October 13th? early morning hours of October 14th. Okay, so again, we know that they know who Bryan is, and he's connected to the Elantra on November 30th. I do believe it took a little time to connect everything here. And we can see at the bottom here that the investigators believe that Kohberger was still driving the Elantra on December 13th because he was captured on that license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. So at this point, they're looking for Bryan, right? They're searching for him. They're trying to find where he is and validate the findings that they have so far, okay? All they have right now is there's a guy named Bryan Kohberger who owns a white Elantra, who's been contacted by the police a couple times. He's not coming forward, right? This guy's a suspect, so they're trying to track him down. Now, I don't know what happened. I'm under the assumption he was in, or I've heard that he was, he finished the semester, and I believe that that ended on December 9th. I don't know if he might have gotten out sooner than that. I don't know what he was doing from November 30th to December 9th, but they hadn't found him or hadn't been able to do anything yet because maybe they were waiting for information. But on December 13th, they knew on 11/30, but on December 13th, they were still looking for him. So here's where we get to that traffic stop. I'm going to show you that video now. Okay, so just to clarify, he was spotted on a license plate reader on December 13th in Loma, Colorado. They're looking for a white Elantra. This stop here took place on December 15th. So they're trying to track down Bryan Kohberger where they ran this plate on a vehicle. Okay, they still haven't put Bryan in the vehicle. It's registered to him, but they're having to piece together things before they're able to move forward with getting the warrant in order to get his DNA. And I'm sure they just want to know where he is, right? Now, the reason I don't believe that this stop was done intentionally or ordered by the FBI is because it doesn't make sense to me that they would risk sending a single officer up to this vehicle with the risk of an encounter. They don't know if Bryan has a firearm. Bryan's dad is in the vehicle there. So sending an officer to the passenger side window in order to get a look at his hands or to get body cam footage of his hands, to me does not make any sense. I think that that's a very risky thing to do. Now, if anybody is thinking that both of the stops were intentional, that's extremely risky, right? So having two encounters with a suspect like that on purpose, not knowing if he's armed with another person in the vehicle, would be very reckless, in my opinion, and I don't think law enforcement would do that. Keep in mind, we can read a wristwatch from the moon with some cameras, so if they're trying to get a look at Bryan's hands and see if he has cuts or if they need to see his hands, they have a lot better cameras out there for that, and on a cross-country trip, there's a lot of opportunities to get a picture of his hands. So again, I don't believe that these stops were in order to get a look at Bryan's hands. These two stops were to put Bryan in the vehicle and to confirm his ID. They wanted to see an ID, see him driving it. They've got the tags, they've got the registration, but they need him physically in the car. They also want to know where he is, right? Okay, so now that was the goal of the traffic stops. Now, the reason for the traffic stops were because these officers were on high alert for a white Elantra that had been spotted on a license plate reader on December 13th in Colorado. So I'm pretty sure that the major highways had officers positioned on alert looking for this car. I think that the first officer in the black SUV, i.e. the county officer, saw Bryan, and the mission here again is to place this person in the vehicle, get a look at him, get a look at his ID, and say, yeah, this is the guy, and they're planning to track him. I'm pretty sure they know where he's going, and they're going to confirm all of the connections and then proceed with the warrant so that they can go get his DNA and then really confirm everything. So this officer here was just doing his due diligence. I think he was on alert. I think he saw the car. Now, that said, listen to how this interaction happens, and there's a few things I want to point out. So one of the things is when he pulls him over, he immediately asks him for his driver's license. Okay, he doesn't say, driver's license, registration. Okay, so think about when you take a shower and you get out and you dry off the way you dry off every day. Imagine if you did that the opposite. You'd have to think a lot more and it would throw you off, right? So when this officer walks up and he just says, "Hey, can I see your driver's license?" And then he kind of gives him the excuse of why he pulled him over, because he has to get that out of the way legally. And he says, "Well, I pulled you over for following too close," which is pretty hard to dispute, right? So he pulls him over and then he says, "Can I see your driver's license?" And then the next question he asks is this your vehicle? Okay, he doesn't ask for registration. So in my opinion, that was a little bit choppy for an officer doing a normal traffic stop where he's doing his due diligence on that process. I think there was a specific purpose to this traffic stop, and those were just kind of the things he needed to get out of the way in his process of confirming the identity of Bryan. Now, what he's going to do is he's going to take Bryan's driver's license and he's going to hold it in his hand. Pay attention to that. And he's kind of he's going to lean into the vehicle and ask them some standard questions about where they're heading and, get a good look. He's going to look down at that driver's license and get the name. And you can listen to the tone of the officer. It's very short. He's not really very interested in what they're telling him. He's just going through that process because he's doing his job and he's confirming the identity. He has every intention to let them go at this point. He's not going to cite them. Again, this stop was to put Bryan in the vehicle. Now, this wouldn't be true crime time if there wasn't something a little bit creepy. Now, keep in mind my theory that Bryan frequents restaurants and targets his victims when he travels around the country. When the officer asks him, "Where are you heading?" Bryan twice tells him they're going to get some Thai food. So he says it early on in the video, and then he says it a little bit further in there. So listen to that as well. Keep in mind, they're in Indiana right now. Probably Bryan's traveled here before, but I almost wonder if there could be some cases in Indiana where Bryan could be involved with those. It seems to me like he maybe knows of a place here where there's some Thai food. He kind of, motions with his head when he says it. Let me know what you think about that. Is it unusual to you that Bryan might just kind of know where a Thai food place is in the middle of Indiana, that he goes to often? All right, so let's take a look.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing early.
What's WSU?
University, basically. That is SWAT team and everything.
So we're okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going where? Oh,
we're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're slightly punchy because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours. We're driving. Well, almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
yeah, there was a mass shooting and everything.
Where? Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying because he's just over the university.
There's the ID look there.
Mm-hmm. So y'all work at the university there?
I actually do work there.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
This happened this morning. About an hour and a half ago. We're still wrapping it up, investigating. I'm not sure there's two shootings because they did shoot somebody.
Let's see.
And then you don't know about that. Actually, they were apparently like shooting out of the window or something.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
Oh,
all right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay, like I said, he was there for a reason. He wanted to confirm who that was in the car. He wanted to get that ID, run that plate, and put Bryan in the vehicle. He wasn't very interested in that conversation about the shooting and all that. He was just going through the motion, and then you can see he was ready to cut out of there. He didn't even give him, hey, I mean, he, just a little brief, all right, don't follow too close, and he walked away. So, he knew he had his guy, and he was ready to get word back. The other thing to take note of here is that that's not your typical highway patrol vehicle. So it kind of supports my idea that that officer was stationed in order to find the Whitey launcher or be on alert for it. Let's look at the other traffic stop. It's very similar. The officer is a little bit more friendly, but he does pretty much do the same exact script. Pulled you over for driving too close, kind of chit-chats a little bit. He does ask for the registration as well. He may have been also wanting to tie, the name, because remember, they had run the registration on the vehicle, so he might have done that. But his interaction is almost identical to the questioning and interaction with this officer. He's just a little more friendly, but he does the same thing. He confirms the connection to the car, and then he cuts out of there pretty quick because I think he also was pretty confident that they had a match. He does do a little bit more due diligence on kind of giving him reminders about not driving too closely. The other reason I think the second stop was also to confirm the ID is if the first officer had just stopped him for tailgating, and now the second officer's stopping him for tailgating, and they're saying, oh, hey, they just pulled me over for driving too close. It's strange to me that the officer wouldn't say, well, hey, you just got pulled over for driving too close. Why are you driving too close again? So once again, that was kind of an unusual flow, the way that stop went, that makes me think that the mission was to just get Bryan in the vehicle. Okay, I apologize if this is a little bit small. I'm just doing this on my phone right now. I will be upgrading, so it will get better, but let's take a look at this traffic stop. Now, again, this is the second traffic stop in Indiana after that first one that we just watched.
I stopped you when you were driving by me there. You're a little too close to the back of that semi. In the back of this trailer. About one car going 10 miles an hour, so if you're going 60 or 70 miles an hour, you're about 6 or 7 cars.
So guys, if you're getting pulled over for driving too closely and you maybe weren't, watch out, you might be getting tracked.
Oh, you guys did? Yeah, I did. You guys stopped by a trooper? We don't have any SUVs. It was a county guy. Was it like a black SUV? Yeah. Okay, all right. You thought you guys were following too closely? I don't. Okay. What happened to WSU when my son goes to school? Today? Well, I'm not going to give you guys another ticket or warning if you just got stopped. Just make sure you give yourself plenty of room, okay? So like I said, it's all about how fast you're going, okay? So if you're going 10 miles an hour, you only need one car. Right? If you're going, so the speed limit here is 7. If you're going 7 miles an hour, you need 7 cars. Yeah. That's the easy way to explain it. Yeah. Okay. It's really good too if you're in the B&B meal, it says 2 to 3 seconds. All right. Have a safe trip. Where y'all headed? Thank you so much for stopping. Where y'all headed to? Huh? Where a long haul. You guys scared of airplanes? Did you? Okay. All right, well, hey, good job, safe trip. Thanks. Safe.
So again, everybody, just to recap, I'm pretty confident that these two traffic stops were two officers doing their job. They were on alert. They saw the car. They made contact and confirmed. I think that second officer was in the field. He may not have known yet that this first officer had confirmed and was getting things rolling. They were pretty close together. So that's my opinion on it. Please let me know what you think about that. Remember, everybody, don't forget to lock your doors.